Keys to the Commonwealth, a podcast where we share the real stories of local community members who are using real estate to build personal wealth, along with tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. And now, your host, Landry Fields.
What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. Going to do a little bit more of a life update today, as well as just kind of shoot the breeze on a lot of the stuff that's happening in either the world or locally here in the Kentucky area in regards to just real estate, the dollar, and so forth. So I think it's all applicable conversations to be had and kind of things to keep on our radar for sure as things change and so forth. But excited to have my business partner in crime on the real estate side, Andrew Jarvis, back. What's going on, Andrew?
Not much, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We're going to move the mic a little bit closer to your voice there. But yeah.
I'm so tall. Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, what's new? What's been going on in your world since we've last had you on the podcast? Obviously, I know, but update anybody else. Obviously, some hopeful changes coming down the road.
Yeah. Personally, we have an 8-month-old, which is awesome.
And you're getting some sleep now. You finally did the sleep training we talked about.
We finally did the sleep training, yeah. It was I don't think it was like, is the baby ready? I think it was our mom and dad ready for the crying. But no, he's doing much better on that front, so that's been nice. Just loving dad life.
Yeah.
And then real estate rise. Let's see, we got a flip going in Richmond that we're hopefully finishing up on here soon. Never fast enough when you're in it, but no, it's coming into the home stretch. And then personally and professionally, working on my real estate license, which is exciting. So I've been working over the last couple months on the coursework. So I did that through the CE shop, which is a popular route. A lot of people go for the real estate realm because you can kind of self-pace. So I finished all my coursework, have the final exam next Tuesday, which is a proctored final exam.
Oh, really?
Never done one of those. Yeah, they like watch you through your computer, like watch you take it in your house. Yeah, so that'll be exciting.
All my insurance ones I always did, like where you go into a big room and there's like cameras and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's how I did on my education one. So this is a little different. So you can do it from home, but they like are in your computer watching you. Make sure you don't have any snacks or drinks in the room.
I don't know how I feel about that.
It's kind of weird.
I feel like I'd be more nervous about that than going into a room.
Yeah, and I've seen very mixed reviews on it. Like people, there's like a whole Facebook page around the CE shop, and some people say, yeah, it's no big deal. You log in, they take the test. Some people are like, oh, they didn't like that I had curtains on the wall, so they kicked me out. And you had to, so we'll see. So hopefully I'm taking my final next Tuesday. And then after you take the final for the course, you pass that, then you take the certification test.
Okay.
And then once you're certified, then it goes to the state, and you're kind of at their mercy as far as when you're what's called active in the system.
Okay.
So that can take as much as a month or two, but hopefully this summer be a licensed realtor. So super excited about that. Through our investing together over the last year and a half, fell in love with the whole management aspect of things, from managing the rehab to managing the rental properties. So the plan is to open up my own property management, offer those services to others as well. So super excited about that. Been talking to brokerages and think we're heading in the right direction on that path, and excited. I think in the next week or two, we'll kind of know where that's going to land. And so that's really exciting, and excited to get it up and running.
Because I always rave to everybody I talk to as far as like you on that side of things, because we've talked about it, like just our partnership together. You know, we each bring different, I think, things that we're both stronger at in different ways. And you being able to put up with middle schoolers for whatever it's been, 12 plus years or whatnot.
You're 13.
In a way where they, you can meet them on an emotional level that they kind of need, but while being firm and not letting them walk all over you. Yeah. It's the perfect transition to managing real estate property.
It does feel
habitational stuff, right?
It feels very similar, in some ways. No, our tenants have been great. We've been very fortunate. We have great tenants. But that's a process that's in place to make sure you get great tenants. And I was talking to
But to have the communication there, say, hey, keeping that open in a good context.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The structure's in place, the relationship building. I talked to a broker just a few days ago, and they were saying that he always tells teachers, police officers, and firefighters, if you want to go into real estate, do it today. He's like, because your skills translate so well.
Really?
Yeah, and I do feel like a lot of my experiences in education have translated, like you're mentioning, really well into it. So I'm could not be more excited. So I'm hoping to partner with a lot of people. I know there's a ton of great investors in town that we've already met just in our short time doing this. So
absolutely
excited to partner with people, and man, I can't wait.
I was gonna say even the contractor side of things, kind of GCing like a lot of our stuff. I was going to say that there's a lot of kind of making sure things still happen in a timely manner, or you know, and so forth. So there's a lot of good ones out there for sure, but I mean, there can be a lot of bad experiences with certain contractors.
Yeah, we've been fortunate, but you and I are both kind of control freaks. I think we both openly admit that. And I know I speak for myself, I'm definitely wired that way. So the last 2 flips, doing it kind of, I don't want to say hands off because we haven't been hands off, but doing it where you're not on site regularly has been a really good learning experience where you do have to trust people. But with that trust also comes a high level of communication and making sure you're pushing it forward from afar and staying on top of it. You know, while understanding that if you're working with a good contractor, they're busy, right? Because they're in demand. So you want someone that's in demand, but also, you know, communicating with them, making sure that we're not the holdup in any manner, that we have everything, you know, planned out. We've made all the decisions that need to be made and whatnot. So,
exactly. Yeah, and that's, I guess, now that you say that, it is a good aspect of as far as us learning other things. I wouldn't have thought about us learning from having to do a couple of the updates on some of these flips from a truly not truly hands-off experience. I, for one, on this last flip, have basically been truly hands-off in that way, just from a multitude of factors and different things. So I've never even been in the house that we're flipping right now. Right. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, how does that feel? Because I know you're kind of you're like me. You like to know what's going on, and you.
Yeah, but I mean, but back to, I think, some of our earlier conversations about doing our due diligence up front and knowing what, and then having the trust of each other to know, like, you know, we still. Obviously, I pretty much call you every day on the way home from work just to kind of see if there's any updates or whatnot from an investing side or tenant side. It's nice to know that sometimes there's tenant issues or things that obviously you kind of handle and I don't even have to worry about or get brought on. You're like, oh yeah, we had this happen, you know, a couple of weeks ago type of thing. So
there's a certain level. If it doesn't go above that level, you don't get informed. It's only when it goes above a certain level is it like where you let the business partner know. And not to go off on this tangent, I think we've mentioned it before, but in choosing, for me, I would not have jumped into real estate by myself. It had to be with a partner. And I think choosing the partner is so crucial. And it's nice that we're obviously really good friends, but that's not why this has worked. It's because our skill set complements each other so well. And we communicate in a high level.
We had been through hills and valleys together in life in general, so it's not like we're just good buddies, and you know you don't go. And once you go through some of the valleys in life, that kind of solidifies more or less who you trust in the person as well as knowing the person as far as their hearts or how they react in things and scenarios and so forth. So we had already done a lot of that prior, obviously.
That's a really good word. Yeah, when you've been through those hills and valleys, the water heater that breaks on Christmas Day or the snake skin found in the flip, those things don't seem so big when you've been through other experiences together.
Yeah, let's not have contractors put snake skins in the doorway for other contractors and then therefore scare them from coming into the flip.
That was a whole
There were no snakes, so I'll just end the story with that, but
at least currently they obviously were at some point, but
at one time, but yeah, so that's exciting, and you're going to kill it.
Thank you.
Obviously, anybody listening to this podcast, I mean, definitely hit up myself or Andrew on either social media, or I'll let him give out his info if he wants to at the end. But you know, he's great at what he does already for us, and he's going to be great for everyone else that wants to potentially work with you as far as that goes. So super excited for you to take the jump and leap that you've been, I think, clamoring to do for years now.
I think you know as well as anybody. You've heard about it almost as much as my wife has about how. So yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'm super excited to get into it. It's been a lot. It's been kind of that. My wife said really wisely several years ago, it can't be about your no if you're leaving one season. It needs to be about what the yes is. The yes that you're going towards needs to be greater. And it was cool this over the last year and a half in investing that we have found that yes, the thing that, you know.
And now that you're a dad, that just usually amplifies things in a whole lot more of a bigger light kind of thing. But there's always seasons for stuff too. So there wasn't like there was a season earlier you missed out on probably attempting it. It's always in time. So
yeah, that's very true.
It's been good. So obviously things are all over the map though in some respects. Let's jump into more just locally, because you've been kind of updating me, because haven't been able to be. I mean, obviously on the insurance side, I've just been slammed right now because everybody is in that season of trying to find ways to save money and so forth, which is a good problem to have. And you know, so we are definitely, even though we're not like the ginormous agencies out there, we have options and carriers that they will never get, and they know we're even though we're maybe a David, not a Goliath, that we are still extremely competitive from an insurance perspective. But anyway, that's been great. But from that perspective, I haven't been able to really be on the the message boards or anything like that lately. But I guess there's a couple things coming on, at least speaking locally, right? As far as from the short-term rental side, as well as more of the long-term rental side of things. So
yeah, there's a lot moving on that, and I want to say thank you to the investors Facebook page, the Bluegrass. They've been a wealth of knowledge. Thanks to the admin and all the people. I mean, gosh, we've learned so much from that community of people. But yeah, so currently,
and once you're not doing teaching real full time, we can start doing more of these events and meeting more people face to face.
I know. I look forward to that. Yeah, right now it's just behind a screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's two, to the best of my knowledge, there's two kind of angles on this. So the local government is exploring greater regulation, like you said, in both spheres, the long term and the short term. So we'll kind of break those down.
Yes, we'll start with the short term side of things. It seems like that is not as a surprise, I guess, in what's been discussed or talked about. Maybe not going to be a huge change overall, just more some structure in place, right?
Yeah. So and being upfront, you and I do not have a short-term rental yet. So, we're kind of doing this from the sidelines, if you will. But yeah, so the local government is trying to put some regulation in place, which I know hearing some of the, your well-known short-term rental investors like, Rob from Bigger Pockets, they have said that they like investing in cities where there is some regulation because it's not like you're getting into it and then you're surprised down the road, right? Yeah. You kind of know what you're getting. So it's in the planning stages. It's actually all been transpiring. There's a message board going just last night and this morning. So it's changing by the minute. So this could be different by the time this podcast airs. But as we speak today, they're exploring where basically you have to register. So you have to be registered with the local government to have a short-term rental. And then there's going to be some regulation on occupancy. So the number floating around today has been 8 would be like the maximum occupancy. Yeah.
I've seen 12 at some points too. So
so they're really trying to distinguish between, and I'm going to get the phrasing wrong, but if it's your primary residence and you're renting out like an ADU versus I don't live there as my primary residence. So they're being stricter on the non-primary residence. And their theory, based on the letter they put together, they being local government, is that there's greater chance that would cause a disturbance to neighborhoods, et cetera, if there's not an owner, it's not owner occupied, or there's someone there to kind of make sure that things are under control. So I think
Yeah, and I know the other argument we've talked to, obviously with, Josh and Heath from Kentucky Live, or other people where, in some ways, yes, but then in some ways you usually bring value to the neighborhood by like having a property that looks really nice at the same time. So sometimes you can improve it. So there's definitely a balancing act there for sure. But I definitely know that the idea of just having a kind of a registration kind of license or whatever it is, that's pretty common in a lot of the big cities anyway across the country.
And it's already in place in Louisville. We explored some properties in Louisville. Now the question would be, how far do they go with that? Do they start limiting how many per neighborhood? Does that make... And there is some concern, I think, from the local government that these short-term rentals are snatching up housing that then doesn't become available to a growing Lexington population. I saw that in the letter as well. But like you said... The pros of that, the other side of that is the business opportunities, right? The fact that we're keeping neighborhood nice because you're not sending someone in once a year to update the property. You're sending someone in regularly to clean and maintain the property. So obviously there's going to be arguments on both sides, but it does seem like we are moving in a direction of some sort of government, regulation in that sphere. It'll be interesting to watch over the next, couple of weeks while it plays out. I know there's some community input sessions coming up and opportunities for both sides to kind of share the pros and cons.
And hopefully it's a collective kind of agreement of like, we're so that we kind of move forward with it together kind of scenario. So everybody's kind of on the same page and it'll be interesting. It'll be good. Hopefully. So,
and then, so the long-term side.
Yes. The long-term is where things seem to be definitely going to be changing potentially a lot.
Yes.
And I don't think I was aware of a lot of what was happening until a conversation I think last week we had. Something like that.
So they're exploring, it seems like, several different options. The one that has happened is there is a fund in place to provide legal representation for a tenant who has been evicted.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to get the number wrong. I think it was $1.9 million or something has already been set aside until that money is gone.
As a public fund to defend those being evicted?
Tenants, right. Okay. And so...
from a residential standpoint, not a commercial...
Residential standpoint, yes. So Stephen Marshall, who's a well-known attorney in the real estate realm, he was...
on the podcast.
Yep, you had him on here, and then I heard him on the radio one day last week, and he was talking about... So they want to have, instead of going right to court, they want to have a mediation period where, like, say we have a tenant that hasn't paid, we would sit down with a mediator and try to come to some kind of resolution. The problem with that, according to Stephen Marshall, is that you're getting more lawyers involved in more processes. And in doing that, the cost goes up because obviously someone has to pay for that legal representation. So the government is going to pay for the tenant side, but obviously as a property owner or as a property manager, you're going to have to pay for representation on your side to engage in those mediation. And then if the mediation doesn't work, then go on to the eviction process in court. Yeah. So anytime there's more cost involved, obviously we have to raise prices to try to meet, we obviously can't lose money on our property, or property owners just sell.
CYA. Okay.
Right. And then people are going to sell off, and that has the opposite effect, potentially, where you end up with less affordable housing because now you're driving up rental costs. So that's kind of what's going to be interesting to watch and see. They did in all fairness, full transparency, I know they did a small, according to Stephen Marshall, practice run of this. The city government did with UK law school. I think they had 12 cases where they tried mediation. And according to Stephen Marshall, I'm not familiar with the results, but he said that it all turned out the same as if it had just gone to court.
So basically,
and been done,
most of it all went to the same place it was going to end up in. It just delayed it, and more lawyers and different people got paid like that.
Longer, maybe perhaps less efficient process. Sounds like sounds like government. No. So it'll be interesting to watch. So that's the one that is happening, and so definitely I think our advice should be to know an attorney if you're going to, we all end up in that position at some point, unfortunately, to have a good representation in case you are faced with that situation.
Absolutely.
There have also been conversations around, I don't know if that's where you were going next, around source of income verification, so perhaps doing away with that. I think the idea being that I can't turn away a tenant because their income is coming from Section 8 versus this W-2 job. So it would not be allowed. That'd be a protected class. So I would no longer be able to say, well, I'd rather have this tenant that has had this job versus this, You can
still verify that they can pay rent, I hope.
My understanding is yes. It's just source of the income, not the amount of income. I know. Yeah. Well, when I first read it, I thought that. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But I think it is source of income.
Source of income. Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. I guess that makes more sense than the other route, which my immediate thoughts were like, that doesn't sound right.
And I think the pushback on that from a property owner standpoint has been, and we've only had one Section 8 experience, and it's been generally positive.
We started our first one.
And it's been generally positive. It's definitely, there's more hoops to jump through. Yeah. No doubt. And so
we've got guests on here talk about it too, where they've had good experiences.
Yes.
Exactly like you just said, that sometimes there's more hoops to jump through initially just on a property inspection, making things which I guess I get in some respects. They want to make sure the property is livable and in good condition, and there's not some kind of major scenario that would be a potential danger or harm to the person that's going to be renting
Which in theory is good, right?
Yeah,
we should be providing good, nice housing for people. I totally agree with that. And our tenant's been great. She's been one of our better tenants. She's paid, it's been great. There's definitely, like you said, more hoops up front. And then sometimes you just kind of get that inefficiency of process. There was an issue with the lease, and they were like, hey, this is great. They paid a security deposit amount more than we asked for. And I was like, hey, you gave us more money than we asked for. What's to do? They're like, no, this is our standard rate, whatever. Well, then a month and a half later, we get an email and say, hey, need you to initial this and the tenant to initial it and need it back today by 3 p.m. And my response was like, I addressed this a month and a half ago. It's unreasonable that you need this by 3 p.m. I'm not going to see the tenant by 3 p.m. So here's my initial. You let me know what you all are going to do from here, basically. And they responded.
I was not aware of this.
Right, it didn't go above that benchmark. No. So they responded and were like, yeah, our bad. And it's not necessarily the lady that we deal with's fault. They're so overworked, right? So that's kind of the concern is like, do they have enough staff resources in place to be able to make that process efficient and reasonable. Yeah. And I think that, if that is the case and they can handle that, then there's no problem with it. So source of income is one, and there's been some other things discussed, but not too far down the pipe that I'm necessarily aware of. I think that's the biggest one that caught my attention. Yeah. But definitely a push for regulation. I think interesting conversation going for. So I actually know the Mr. Landry, who's over a Department of Housing that's their goal is to help provide affordable housing for the city. And so I'm trying to reach out to him and try to set up a meeting with him just to see how we can, like you mentioned earlier, how can we work together as a housing provider with the city? What are you seeing on your end as city housing? What are the needs? How can we work together to help meet that? I think it can be beneficial for both parties if we're willing to engage and have those conversations. So hopefully this summer, I think that's going to be a conversation to be had.
Hey, I mean, if anybody wants to connect us, have it on the podcast where we can ask some of those questions. By all means, I mean, I'd love to do that too. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what some of those things happen. I appreciate having somebody like you kind of being able to keep your thumb on that that needle and so to speak, as far as where it's going and so forth. But yeah, because the real estate market right now is obviously as vastly different than when we jumped into it even 12 months ago, or it's been a little bit more than 12 months ago, because we acquired, from our stories, like 7 units within 3 month span or less.
And then I thought that was what we were going to do forever.
And then since then, it has only been flips type of thing. But again, then it's not been a ton of them, just from me working, you still working a full-time job and that kind of thing. So hopefully we're able to kind of start into doing a little bit more of that. But the flips seems to be where we've kind of landed for right now.
I think with interest rates and prices on homes, it kind of...
I mean, if interest rates could come down to at least, 5 again, it'd still be a lot more doable than it is now from a true kind of burr perspective or something like that, obviously. But yeah, it's you really got to get crafty on how, as far as the properties out there, and there's a lot of them. If they are good, they're gone. With no questions asked, sight unseen kind of scenario. And me and you having to be a little bit more picky, I think, on the front end to safeguard.
And I think that's where you've been really good. That you mentioned my strengths earlier, but your strength is you can kind of without emotion look at a property. And, does it hit a benchmark or not? And I think that'd be another piece of advice to new investors, because we have this saying back and forth, we can afford to pass on a good deal. But when you're starting out, you really can't afford to make a bad deal because then you're in the hole and then you can get burnt out and then you're kind of done with it. So we haven't made a ton of deals. I mean, I guess I say that in 15 months, we've done 9 units or whatever, which is great. But we have passed on a bunch that maybe could have worked, but we weren't 100% confident that they were going to work. And so we were like, hey, we want to play the long game in this and we want to survive and be around doing this 5, 10, 15.
And a lot of it's been learning what things do we not know or have learned about as far as what are big issues versus what are not big issues when it comes to the properties, working with contractors, asking a lot of questions. And that back to the point about contractors, we've had a lot of great ones that have been willing to kind of hey, no, that's not a big, huge issue type of thing. It's not going to be a huge budget thing, or this is, you need to watch out for this type of thing. So, and you've been able to have a lot more better relationships on the contractor side, and we've connected a lot of people between both of us, so that's been great, obviously, in that sense too.
Yeah, I think that treating them with respect and being really kind to them, they're really good at getting back with us and answering questions. An electrician texted me, late last night, early this morning, answering questions about a property we were looking at that we just didn't know, and so he's been really good. And we've used him on some jobs, and then a lot of these we ask him questions, we don't use them because we don't buy the property or whatever. But I think just having that relationship ongoing and understanding that you're playing the long game and keeping that in mind in all aspects of this, how you treat your contractors, what deals you make, I think has been really beneficial for us.
Yeah. And then hopefully we can kind of continue to grow and get some more. Or maybe, like I said, we've kind of thought about trying to use this to kind of build up more cash value so we can have money that we can kind of put into more deals. Because, usually after you buy a property or get property, it's what's usually the kind of the 2-year mark is usually, I guess, not the rule of thumb in some respects, but kind of the loose working idea of what, and you can usually kind of pull equity back out of the property, potentially use somewhere else. I mean, sometimes faster, but that seems to be more or less so it's hard being patient, obviously, right?
Especially when you're considering transition in life and you want to make every deal happen, Patience is definitely not my strength. I think you're a lot better at that than I am. And I think that's been good for us to take our time for sure.
Right. No, it'll be good.
How many times a week do I text your property we got to buy this one?
Yeah.
And how many of them actually work out?
But hey, that's part of it. I mean, there really is part of it. And you're going to either probably starting your own business from scratch, which is not easy, obviously, in any respects, or if you're out there and you've got a business for sale, I mean, obviously let us know, because if we don't want to buy it, we probably know somebody who does type of scenario, which random side tangent, obviously, we just learned the news that the favorite downtown bakery McGee's is closing.
I saw that. After what, 7
years, I think?
Goodness gracious.
I don't know what's up. I saw people I know commenting but why? I'll buy it. Myself, right. So...
Are you going to go get your last donut this weekend? Isn't this the last opportunity?
No, I'm like that old person that's like, nah, you're going to stand in that line.
My favorite bakery ever.
Those Progressive commercials were like, let's not talk about leaving the game before we even get into the stadium type of thing. That's
me.
Totally me too.
Yeah, when we just went to our concert together, we were both thinking about our exit plan before we even got to the concert.
Let me find the best parking spot, and I'm going to make sure I back in. So, even if I get in, yes. Another side tangent real quick, and there's a lot of people listening to this or watch this probably know what I'm talking about. The Upward Soccer League over by the mall area, that is 100% my scenario of because there's some tight spaces and traffic does not move in and out of there quickly. Yes. There's only really one way in and one way out. And so I'm all about trying to figure out and finagle my minivan in the perfect spot so I can just pull right out if I can. So that's a whole nother.
You know what says how big that soccer league is? Obviously my 8-month-old is not in sports yet, but I knew exactly what soccer league we were talking about because if you've ever been out on the weekend in Lexington, you know.
If you have a child between the ages of 4 and 12 probably type of scenario.
In the eastern United States. There's got to be 50,000 people there on a Saturday morning. It's unbelievable.
Wild. It's a lot of fun, though. I'm really going to enjoy it and coaching my eldest son's
Mr.
team
Ted
this
Lasso
year.
Over here, yeah.
I need to start wearing a visor. That would be awesome.
Yes, that'd be great.
But yeah, as far as you keep up with the those national podcasts a lot better than me at the same time with bigger podcasts and so forth like that. I know, there's a real... And we don't have any expertise obviously on this, but it's more where we're kind of keeping our thumb on the pulse of what's going on. And I said thumb on the needle earlier, didn't I? That's not a phrase. It's thumb on the pulse. That makes a whole lot more sense than thumb on the needle. Let me catch myself there. Speaking though to the national or kind of or global landscape of things, obviously the idea of the dollar has been kind of a scenario, kind of like an inflation aspect, and is the dollar losing its power? I think for those that don't know, for obviously up until a couple decades ago, the dollar was always backed by gold, and then I think most people don't realize it's not backed by gold anymore, and people kind of refer to it as a petrodollar, but basically the fact that the Arab nations aspect of purchasing crude oil, you have to use USD. Right. In order to purchase that if you're another country and so forth. So the dollar's value was really backed by the fact that most companies had to use it in order for a lot of, gross domestic kind of purchases and so forth.
Yep. I didn't know any of this until you called and told me this 2 weeks ago. So.
And now they started talking about it on some of the national stuff. And you're like, oh, I know a little bit
I've
about
heard
this.
Of this.
So, but yeah, the fact that if people haven't heard about it, you've got the what they call the BRICS, the BRICS, which is the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But there's some other countries like Mexico and I think a couple other South American countries and some others that have kind of joined it. They're trying to kind of, I don't know if alarming is the right word, but it's definitely something kind of to keep your pulse on of forming kind of an alliance, obviously, and there's some rumors about them trying to create their own, coin or currency scenario things as well. That's just rumored at this point, but I don't know. It makes you a little bit nervous, as far as that goes. And
I know even on the most recent Bigger Pockets podcast, David Green mentioned concern over, with inflation, the value of the dollar has gone down, and then mixed with the stuff you're describing, maybe our kind of preeminent spot as the dollar being the go-to currency or the reserve currency for other nations going away and them choosing, other currencies taking their place. So then what does that mean for the value of the dollar here?
Yeah.
David Green thought, and he said, these are my personal thoughts, that more, instead of other countries wanting to send things to us for cheap because they want the dollar back, now a lot of that stuff might have to be produced in America, which would continue to drive up the cost of items. And so basically what he's fearing or believing is that inflation is here to stay and the value of things is going to continue to go up. The cost of things, is going to continue to go up and up and up. And so then how do we respond? Right.
That's why we should not buy property, right? Wink, wink.
Right. So if you're out there, he said sell all your property to Andrew and Landry today.
For seller finance.
Yes, please. Yeah. 0 down payment was actually what we were looking for. No. So, and I can speak as someone who is in a W-2 world and has been there for 13 years and has explored other opportunities, exploring other opportunities. And a lot of the pushback you get is, well, why would you leave the W-2 guarantee while all this uncertainty and while, whatnot? Well, because my W-2 job hasn't kept up with inflation.
Yeah.
I have 3 college degrees. I am the highest paid teacher for my years of experience possible. I have all these stipends for being team leader, department chair, whatever.
Yep.
All I'd say, I make as much as I possibly can as a teacher in the public school system. And it's month to month at times. That W-2 job doesn't keep up. Whereas real estate properties do tend to, over the course of history, obviously keep up.
In general, entrepreneurship and owning a business. Which is obviously all that's rolled into one, why I do this podcast and post so much, because more from an educational standpoint of hopefully giving not only one value of like how to do certain things, because I didn't know anything I'm doing. Like I own a business where I have employees, I have agents. Didn't know how to. I never owned a business prior to this. Obviously, had some experience running some stuff, but it was still a ridiculous amount to learn. I didn't know anything about real estate until when we jumped in. That was a terrifying day when we kind of did that. We're like, "What the heck? What are we doing?" But we knew. But all that to wrap that all into like kind of one thing in the sense of like knowing if I don't do something. There's certain people that they need, that's fine for them, which I totally get, W-2, et cetera.
Yep.
And there's others who are like, well, I'm going to bet on myself.
Yes.
And I think myself is a better bet than say maybe the stable or the trust in the government or other stuff like that, or trust in my corporation I work for or whatnot. And again, you get into this other world. And I've sent you memes, I know, and stuff like that of people, with some different stuff where people leaving their job, and it's like, in one sense, it's terrifying. But once you've jumped out and you kind of landed and realize, like, okay, you're gonna be fine. You're not gonna die here, type of a thing. Like, it's like you stepped out of the Matrix in some ways. Well, the Matrix is a bad comparison because it wasn't that great of a world outside of the Matrix. But you know what I'm saying. And
I think as your friend watching you leave the former profession and start a business and I watched you take the classes and literally start from the ground up.
And probably had the thoughts of, Landry, you're an idiot.
Yeah, there was thoughts of, man, how are you going to do this? You know? And watching you do it successfully. And like you said, figure it all out as you did it. Yeah. And then you kind of drug me into real estate investing. We both wanted to do it, but if I hadn't had you, I wouldn't have done it. And that being successful, like I wouldn't even be considering jumping into anything new if it wasn't for watching you have those experiences and us doing real estate together. And so to echo what you're saying, I hope if nothing else, you, us, our investing story, your business story, hope my business story soon, can inspire other people that like, hey, bet on yourself. There's enough resources out there. There's enough people that are willing to help. There's enough people that want to partner with you and help show you the way. We'd love to partner with people. For you to do it, And I love what you said. That phrase kind of keeps playing back in my mind in this season too. Bet on yourself, because I think that's a safer bet, like you're saying.
That's really what it came down to for me. Yep. It was as simple as that. Like, nothing's going to change unless I start jumping out, making a change. For myself, betting on myself, and then it's just a matter of how much you can value yourself as far as getting to where you want to go. So then, there's nothing holding you back really in that sense. And definitely a lot of hard work, because it's like a lot of working nights or doing other part-time jobs until you can fully turn that whole, you got that foundation and the business itself is taking off and sustainable on its own. But so there's definitely like a little, I was like, I'd rather take a small step back in order to take 25 steps forward type of scenario, really. And that's truly a lot of the time what can happen if you just are willing to take a step back.
For you all listening, he's preaching to me because he tells me this once a week. Because when I start to get a little nervous, a little shy, I just don't know. He's like, come on, you got to do it. He's like,
do it.
There's no going back.
You've been talking about it for
he's
too
tired
long.
of hearing about it.
No, but there was, getting back to the season aspect. There was a season, it wasn't like we were ready, you were ready or something like that. There was a season for me once I finally it was like, this is my time. We got to make that jump type of thing. And you've had a kid now, so now it's your time. So
that's right. Let's go.
No, but seriously, you are great at managing these properties that we already have and so forth. And so if anybody is looking for that, you're going to be an excellent person to do so, as far as trustworthiness on top of things, communication on things as well, and only having to get involved, knowing that I can trust you, and only have to get involved if there's something that's above that certain threshold or whatnot. Yeah. So it's exciting. So good stuff, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Well, I think that's about it from there. Otherwise, anything. Do you have any kind of website or anything set up yet at this point?
I don't yet. We're waiting for the broker conversations to happen and for one to be finalized. Yeah. But you can find me on Facebook.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can always
Jarvis.
Find us.
Yep. And then we're on, I'm on the investors page all the time. So please friend, connect. Like we want to make as many connections as we can. So reach out. Love to connect and keep learning.
There we go. Good. Appreciate it. And we'll see everybody back next week on another episode of the podcast. Until then, Andrew, appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
To learn more about this podcast, visit our page at keystothecommonwealth.com. To connect with Landry regarding insuring your investment portfolio, email Landry at novainsuranceGroup.com or call 859-687-2004.